Life Survival Guide, where I share survival tips on creativity, productivity, and balancing a creative life. I'm your host, Laura. Hello, creatives. I am here with my husband, Alan, and we are going to talk a little bit about Rocketry today. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing great, Laura.
This is going to be
Thanks for
fun.
having me on.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because we're sharing the same microphone because I only have one microphone and we're doing this right next to each other. So it's awesome. So you are really into rocketry and you're president of the Huntsville Area Rocketry Club, right?
Yeah. HARA, the Huntsville Area Rocketry Association.
That's awesome. So you've kind of been involved in this, for quite a while. So how did you really get into it?
Yeah, it was about 7 years ago. I was doing an internship with Marshall Space Flight Center for NASA here in Huntsville. It was my first time coming to the town. And part of that was developing the U.S. Space and Rocket Center's robotics camp. And while we were there, in order to get to know the kids and their mindset and the experiences they were doing, they had us be crew trainers, the camp counselors, part-time. And for part of that, they had us build the rockets the camp kids use and go out to shoot them. And it was a fun little activity. People enjoyed it. But for me personally, I had a really good time doing it. It was putting it together. I love working with my hands. You press the button and fire comes out. It was really fun with me. And I said to myself, I wanted to keep doing this.
That's really awesome. So you also were involved in college as well with some of the, your school had a rocketry thing?
Yeah, that came a couple years later. So I came back from that internship. I kept doing school. And I would buy a couple rockets at Hobby Lobby. Like if you wanted to get into it, probably the easiest thing would be you go to Hobby Lobby and they've got a shelf with some small rocket motors, small rocket kits. And I would do that. I would buy one about a year or so, and I would build one, and every now and then I would launch them. But I really wasn't doing it with anybody and had no resources to learn about it that I was aware of at the time. So I would go out to fields wherever I found them and kind of shoot them fast before anybody saw me, which is not what I recommend to anyone. But we all start somewhere.
Yeah, and now you're president of your club. So what kind of goes into the Rocketry Club, and what sort of things do you guys put on for people who are building rockets and can come out and shoot? Because we've been to a couple launches together. So
yeah. So we have monthly meetings where we go over club business, we do show and tells, we explore people's projects. When we can, we have people give tech talks about their subjects and interesting things they're doing, what they've built recently, problems they're looking to solve, where the community can come and discuss things, share ideas. So we fly smaller mid-power and low-power rockets. Those are the kinds you can find in Hobby Lobby in a public field out in Research Park. To do that, to do small rockets like that, you don't need a waiver with the FAA. You don't need to call air traffic control. Those are the typical hobby starter rockets anyone could go and buy and fly. We do that whenever we have an opportunity. Sometimes people will go out there and fly just by their family. Sometimes someone will post on the group and say, hey, I'm flying, come out and join us. We also use that field for school competition teams. There's a challenge called the Team America Rocket Challenge, or TARC. I think they actually just changed the name to the American Rocket Challenge. But school teams build a rocket, and their challenge is to lift a number of eggs. It's usually one, sometimes it can be 2 or 3, to around 700 or 800 feet and return it to the ground in about 40 seconds. It's a really great engineering and learning challenge for the kids. And we've got a few active schools in the area that our club members help out and mentor every year.
Well, I think that's awesome too, because Huntsville is known as the, Rocket City. And so that's really cool. I think that takes my California egg drop, where you just dropped it from an egg from a certain height.
Well, that's right.
You tried not to break it.
California won't let you start any fires.
No, you cannot. You can't start fires in California. That is a big no-no. Now, you guys also have a bigger field where bigger rockets can kind of go off. You guys you work with a farmer, so when he's not planting any crops or anything, you guys can go out there and shoot Those really, you have a lot of people that come up to those, and you have a lot of college teams as well.
Yes, there are college competitions as well. So out in the farm field we use out by Woodville, that's where we do what's called high power rocketry. And high power rocketry, once the motors get to a certain size and have a certain amount of propellant in them, you have to be certified through either the National Association of Rocketry or the EEE Rocketry Association. And when the rockets are that large, they become a danger to air traffic. So we get official FAA waivers to be able to use that little chunk of airspace and fly for the day.
That's really awesome. So like you still have people that come out and just watch, but you also have a lot of teams that compete there, and they can get qualifications and things there too.
Yeah, people can come and certify for being able to fly high power motors. There are levels 1, 2, and 3, and when you get to 3, you can fly absolutely huge rockets. I'm level 2 myself. I can't quite get to the level 3. Can't justify that expenditure yet, but you know how it is. You mentioned college competition and teams. So a couple years after I came back from my first internship, I did another couple of internships. And then my final semester, I only had a couple classes, and there was a group of students starting a rocket club at my old university. So I joined in, and that competition was to send a 10-pound payload to 10,000 feet. And we did that out in Utah. And there are other university rocket competitions. There's one in New Mexico, and one called the NASA Student Launch, which flies right here in Huntsville. And every year, our club members help out the National Association, run the range, and review the college rockets for safety. It's a really great time because college students, they do a lot of innovation. They try and experiment on things more so than some of the average hobbyists around.
Well, and I think that's really awesome too. So like if people are kind of interested in this, and you're maybe younger, if you're in high school and college, just know that there are options. So what other things, like if people wanted to get involved in it, you don't necessarily have to be younger. You can kind of start at any age.
Oh, absolutely. If anything, it's a little easier once you're older because then you're not relying on allowance. You may have a little more discretionary spending at your disposal.
Yeah. So kind of we talk a little bit about like creative balance with our lives, and kind of not many of us can pursue our creative hobbies full time. Rocketry isn't necessarily a big money making hobby.
No, quite the reverse.
Yeah. So you have to pay a lot for some of those bigger motors and things like that. So how do you kind of build that into your everyday life? You have a job, you show up 9 to 5 and all these sorts of things. So how do you kind of balance some of this? There's a lot that goes into rocketry.
Yeah. For my lifestyle, mainly moderation is key. So I have a monthly budget for rocketry related expenditures, and if I go over it, I spend less the next month. So that's a step I've taken to keep it in check, really. Work-life balance applies to hobby also. When the hobby becomes an obsession and a pursuit, you really lose the joy of it. And then when your hobby becomes your job and your driver, then it's not really as fun anymore. So there are some months when I don't even do anything hobby-related or rocket-related other than, well, obviously going to the club meetings because I'm the president, and that's a responsibility I can't just forget about.
Yeah.
But for personal rockets, I may build something for 2 or 3 months and then I won't. And if I go to a big launch and fly a bunch of rockets, I may bring the stuff home, clean it out, and may not touch it again for another month. It ebbs and flows like any hobby. When you have time for it, you do it and you enjoy it. Sometimes if something special's happening, like if there's a big launch out in the West with a big old waiver, you'll plan a vacation around it. But not allowing a hobby to take over your life is super important.
Well, I think, and that's definitely something we've talked about too, is just like, to maintain balance. Sometimes you do have to take a step back and you have to kind of, I'm a little burned out, or you want your creative hobbies to still be fun. You want to enjoy them. And that's the whole reason that we kind of pursue them is, we do find them enjoyable. And when we reach a point where we've done it so much, it does kind of, kind of overwhelm us a little bit. So that is a really, really good tip. So I guess to finish this up, where do you find a lot of these rocketry resources? If you're interested in starting and you're not quite sure where to start, what sort of things can people look at? I mean, you said Hobby Lobby earlier.
Right. If you're wandering around Hobby Lobby and you find the rocketry aisle, it's towards the back with the hobbies and the little balsa cars for, who does that? Is that Boy Scouts?
I think so, yeah. The race cars.
Yeah, I wasn't in Boy Scouts, so I don't know these things. But there's rocketry there, and you can find starter sets that are really, really helpful because they've got a launch pad, they've got one or two rockets, like an easy one, and then a little more involved one. And you buy that, you buy a pack of motors. Then the hardest thing, honestly, is finding somewhere safe and legal to fly. A real challenge with the hobby these days is public parks and liabilities. Like they'll put restrictions on everything. So it's up to you how far your research into the restrictions are going to be. They say sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than permission, but I of course will not recommend any actions like that.
Yeah, well, I think too maybe people can just look around your area and see if there is a local rocketry club that you can kind of get information from specifically.
Yes, if you go to if you look up the NAR, the National Association of Rocketry, there's a Find a Club page that will show you where rocketry clubs are in your area. And even if they're a little far away, you can still call them up and ask for advice, ask about things going on in the area, ask for help finding locations. I think there are resources on the NAR website about how to approach a landowner for permission to use the field, so that can be really helpful. If you join NAR or Tripoli, there's member insurance that comes with that membership. So if, God forbid, something happens or a car gets dinged up or a rocket hits something, the insurance pays out quite a bit to make sure you're covered on that. If you get hurt through your rocketry actions,
well, that's your own fault.
The insurance does not do the personal injury, but as far as liability and property damage, it's pretty useful.
I think that's really helpful. And you guys have a rocketry forum too, just where just anybody can kind of talk and have conversation and maybe ask some questions, get some input, that sort of stuff too. Which
the rocketryforum.com. It's a great online. It's a free resource. There's topics about pretty much everything from the small low power stuff you can get in Hobby Lobby to the big high power stuff. If you like scale modeling, like building old rockets, there's a scale modeling forum. There's a yard sale where people put up stuff they don't need anymore for sale, and it's a bunch of pretty good people. So I've never regretted buying anything there or asking questions there.
Well, I think that's really awesome. It's just like kind of maybe if you're not necessarily into rocketry, but the sort of creative community I think reaches out is really helpful just across the board, and everybody kind of wants to support these sorts of things and kind of give people as much help as they can, and it feels good to help people. It feels good to encourage people's creative pursuits and things like that. So
if you're somewhere on the older side and you did rocketry back as a kid, and you want to get back into it, we have a term called the born again rocketeer. A lot of it happens when someone is older, maybe they have kids now or grandkids that they're looking for something interesting to do, and they look at rocketry, and then they discover that, oh yeah, this was really fun, and now I have more resources and opportunity to do it, and you get rejoined into the hobby. That's a common way we see people getting involved.
That's really awesome. Well, if anybody's interested in starting rocketry, I will link all of these things that were mentioned, Tripoli, NAR, all that sort of fun stuff in the show notes. But thank you so much, my favorite husband ever.
Thank you for having me.
This is really awesome. So that's all we have for the Creative Life Survival Guide. Thanks you guys for joining, and we'll see you next week. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this episode of the Creative Life Survival Guide. I have launched a new Patreon at patreon.com/Laura Winter, where I'm going to be releasing my first book, Soul Forgotten, chapter by chapter. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, The chapters are going to be released for free, but I'll also be doing some really fun podcasts afterwards that kind of dive in a little bit to the story behind the story. So if you guys are interested, stay tuned. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Creative Life Survival Guide. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast wherever you choose to listen. To find more information or survival tips for your creative life, head to laura-winter.com.